Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So, what is the topic we have to speak on, Prabhu?
Pranam.
Pranav.
Hare Krishna. Okay, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This is Madhu Siridas here. Yes, Prabhu. Today's topic is preaching. On preaching.
Okay, yeah. Hare Krishna. Okay, fine. Preaching. Okay. Fine. I have to speak in English, isn't it? No?
Yes, Prabhu. International audience today.
Yeah, okay, fine. Om Jnana Atyamirandasya Jnananjana Shalaka Chakshurum Litam Yena Tasmai Shri Guru Namo Vishnu Pad Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
So we are speaking on the topic preaching. Now, as soon as we think about preaching, one verse comes to the mind. Jare dekho tare kaho Krishna udesh. Hamara age taro hoy desh. Hamara age guru hoy taro hoy desh. Tabu na bandhibe toy beshe tarang. Punarapi thai pabe mora sang. Chaitanya Prabhu said, wherever you see, wherever you go, all over the world, simply preach and become guru on my order. Now here the word guru is used in very general sense. That means instruct everybody about Krishna consciousness. In that sense, the term guru is used. And if you do like that, you always speak about Krishna and never forget him, then punarapit hai pabe morasang. Then tabuna bandhibe toy vishetarang. Then you'll not be affected by the waves of material nature. And after this life, you will attain me. This is what is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's promise. Now, it seems simple, but it's not that simple, because to always speak about Krishna, to always think about Krishna, that's a very difficult job. And even if that is easy, Maya is always there to distract us, to tempt us, to make us forget Krishna, to make us fall down. She's always ready and always determined. So when we talk of preaching, there are two things. One is the orders of Lord Chaitanya. The other part is our dedication to that order. Now there are two things simultaneously going. So the orders are perfect because God is perfect. And the problem comes in our dedication to that order. But you see, even if we completely dedicatedly follow this order, still there is a risk. Prabhupada said there are risks on the royal roads. Even there are accidents even on the royal roads, Prabhupada said. So that means if we preach, even if we preach with full rigor and full determination, we can fall down. Although Mahaprabhu promised, if you preach, if you always speak about Krishna, Maya will not affect you. That promise holds good if we are very alert to fulfilling that order. So that's one thing. That alertness is required. Otherwise, you see in the history of any institution, not just ISKCON, Madhva Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya, any institution, great sannyasis have fallen down. Even our institution. And it's no surprise. It's not surprising people falling down after so many years, because it's difficult. For new devotees, it might seem quite surprising why so many advanced devotees and sannyasis fall down. This might seem quite surprising, but because they are preachers and worldwide preachers and sincere devotees, and yes, we don't doubt that they are sincere devotees, But illusion is always, I mean to say, illusion is strong. Even Brahmaji fell down, even Shivji fell down. So who are we to say that we will not fall down? And everybody's tested, by the way. Everybody's tested. So Mahaprabhu has ordered us to preach. Why he has ordered us to preach, even though we are unqualified, we don't know scriptures, we don't know how to preach. But Mahaprabhu said, no problem. Prabhupada said, no problem. Whatever you know, speak. If you know, Prabhupada said to that girl, Saraswati, small girl, Prabhupada said, so who is supreme? So she said, Krishna, the supreme personality. Prabhupada said, even she can preach. Even in Bible, Christ said to his disciples, whatever I've taught you, now go and empty your bags, and my Father will fill it again. So that's also one criteria. Even if you're not perfect and we have fallen, we can simply repeat the message and serve the mission. But having done that, we have to be careful because we are weak. We are weak, and their outside world is very contaminated, very strong illusion. So we can fall down. So what to do? The fear of falling down, should we stop preaching? That's also not an alternative. Prabhupada said in one of his lectures, Prabhupada wrote in one of his letters to one of his devotees, Prabhupada said that keep on fighting. Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is a declaration of war against illusory energy. This is in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada. I think 8th chapter. Krishna consciousness is a declaration of war against illusory energy. That is preaching, by the way. Prabhupada defined preaching as declaration of war against illusory energy, just like Ukraine and Russia are fighting. So that war is still not so alarming. This war is alarming. Bhaktivedanta said to Prabhupada said, why not should we fight with Britishers and make our country India free and freedom and integrity, and then we can think of all this spirituality. Bhaktivedanta said, no. Bhaktivedanta said that freedom is not so urgent. This freedom is urgent. Freedom from the bondage of material, but freedom from bondage of body. And this requires a war against illusory energy because Maya is not going to leave us. So that's a real war. And by the way, that is the internal war which everybody has to go through. So that is preaching. So you see the point, why people fall down in spite of the fact they preach. That's the question. Is Mahaprabhu speaking a lie? Or is his promise not confirmatory that if you preach, then illusion will not affect you? No, the point is we have not defined preaching properly. That's the point I'm trying to bring here. What is preaching in real terms? That has to be defined. In fact, if we start defining what is preaching, then there can be issues because different people have different ideas of preaching. Some people think preaching means giving kathas, speaking stories, and making people laugh and doing some entertainment. Some other people think preaching means doing some entertainment. Some others think preaching means giving a lecture. Some others think preaching means doing workshops, doing seminars, or doing a Sunday program. Some others think preaching means distributing prasadam. Some others think preaching means collecting funds and making temples. So there are so many opinions. So what is preaching, by the way? How do we define what is preaching? Because if we don't define what is preaching, then there is a problem. Then Mahaprabhu's orders doesn't hold good. Mahaprabhu said, if you preach, Maya will not affect you. But what is preaching? So we are going to go to Prabhupada. Now Prabhupada says preaching means declaration of war against illusory energy. That is the definition of preaching. Prabhupada took this statement from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Nityananda Prabhu's Krishna Consciousness Swami says what Nityananda Prabhu was doing. Nityananda Prabhu was a first-class preacher, authorized by Lord Chaitanya to preach in Bengal. And Krishna Consciousness Swami saying what he's doing, Prem Prachar Pashandatala. That is preaching. To preach about love and Pashandalan means to destroy wrong philosophies and wrong conceptions. So these two things are there in preaching. We have to always remember to discuss about love of God and to help people to understand what is love of God and to clear their goal. And the second part is to actually destroy their misconceptions and doubts regarding the goal, and to destroy wrong philosophies which they carry in their mind, like Mayavad, etc., and all these things. So in technical terms, if you want to put it, to destroy misconceptions in sadhya and sadhan. What is a goal and what is a process? All the doubts. That is called preaching. Both these functions has to be done. So to explain about, but both these functions are difficult, because if you try to do this, Prabhupada was saying in one of his lecture, I was hearing Prabhupada said, don't be surprised if there are people like hogs and dogs trying to stop you from spreading the message. Prabhupada said that's not surprising, but there have always been people like that, and there will always be people like that. Now Prabhupada said, Prabhupada was saying, what was that Prabhupada saying? About fear? The pure devotees do not fear, but still they have fear. We were reading 10th canto. So Vasudeva and Devaki, they were pure devotees. Krishna was born to Devaki, right there, right in the lap. But still Devaki and Vasudeva were fearing that Kamsa will come and do something to them. Prabhupada writes in purport that even if they're pure devotees, even if they know this is God and come to rescue us and kill Kamsa, still they were fearing. Why? Because they had love for God. They loved him. So love, another aspect of love is fear. And they knew there'll be problems. Krishna will kill Kamsa, that's for sure. But they were fearing whether Kamsa will come, he will put obstacles, he might also do something to Krishna. So Prabhupada says in the purport, similarly, we are confident that nothing will happen to Hare Krishna movement, because Hare Krishna is an incarnation of God, incarnated in Kali Yuga to destroy all demoniac people, like Krishna killed Kamsa. But still we are fearful that something might happen to this movement, because there are people like hogs and dogs in the society, and envious and demonic people who will try to stop this movement. That's what Prabhupada says. So if you try to do real preaching, that's the whole point. We try to do preaching in preaching sense. In other words, we try to explain people the goal of life is love of God. They will oppose you. It's love of God. Come on, that's crazy. Goal of life is money. Goal of life is career and this and that and that. Goal of life is not love of God. One devotee, he came to Bhakti Vikasa Maharaj, and I was there in South India. Sorry, so he wasn't a devotee, it was just like a congregation. He came and he said to Maharaj, so what we will get by practicing Krishna consciousness? Maharaj said we'll get love of God. So he said, yeah, love of God is okay. What else? As if something else is more important than love of God. He didn't understand. But people will oppose if you tell them. People crucified Christ, isn't it? His message was love of God. People were telling, see Moses in Judaism, he said sacrifice goats and go to temples in Jerusalem and they are priests and all this. Christ said these are all secondary. Number one is love of God. They killed him. People were opposing Narottam Das Thakur. People wanted to kill Narottam Das Thakur. People wanted to kill Dharan Thakur. People wanted to kill Bhakti Siddhanta. Prabhupada said people want to kill me also. So there'll always be envious people. So if you really preach, you will have to face opposition. And opposition is a good symptom that you're really preaching, because you're trying to change the goal of people, love of God. You're trying to make them understand every other goal is useless. And the goal of life is to love God and go back to God. All your love in this material world has no value, no matter how much you love them, no matter how much they love you. Who will accept this? Tell me. They will get frustrated. So that's one thing, love of God. Explain them to change their goal. That, in other words, to change their goal of life. And second is to destroy the misconceptions. People have misconceptions. You tell them, don't worship this demigod, don't worship that demigod. This, your philosophy is wrong. Who will accept? They will. If you try to shut up a dog, barking dog, it will bite you. So that's the whole point, and that's why you see real preaching, prem prachar pashanda galan, that is difficult. And the point is that the difficulties in preaching, that will save you from Maya. That's the whole point. That's why Mahaprabhu said, Tabu na bandhi pe toy vishetara. If you don't have difficulties in life, then empty mind is devil's mind. As soon as we become comfortable, we'll fall into illusion. That's all. As soon as we become comfortable in life. That's why Mahaprabhu said preach. Because he knew if we preach, we will face difficulties. Real preaching, I mean to say, we entertain people and if we speak some stories, then people will like you and everything is good and that's nice. But then we don't spread the real message. We don't spread the real message. We'll be simply talking stories. People can be connected to you or us. What's the point if their life doesn't change? And what's the point? I mean to say, if the life of others do not change, well, it might change, it might not change, but at least we should change. Otherwise, what's the point of preaching? What's the point of preaching if we preach to the entire world and we ourselves are drowning? If we save people and we ourselves are drowning, what's the point? So that's the whole point there. So the difficulties you get in preaching, that will help you to overcome the difficult material ocean of birth and death. So you extract a thorn by a thorn. You extract difficulties by difficulties. You fight sword with a sword, gun with a gun, missile with a missile. So if you have to overcome the difficulties of this material world, birth, that is old age, you have to take another kind of difficulties, which are spiritual difficulties. And that's the law. Krishna says, by experiencing higher taste, you lose lower taste. By experiencing higher difficulties, you lose lower difficulties. By lower difficulties here, I mean difficulties of this material world. Higher difficulties, I mean spiritual difficulties. And that we get if we preach, and that we get if we truly preach the message. And if we don't change the message, and we do what is required. And you see, people say, speak truth, establish truth. But to establish truth, Satyam Param Dhimahi, we need to fight with ourselves, with wrong conceptions, with people who try to oppose by philosophy. And if you fight, there will be problems. So that's the meaning of preaching, by the way. And whom does preaching benefits the most? It's the preacher. It's not the people who are hearing. We should always remember what we are preaching, it's benefiting me, not just all of you. It benefits all. It benefits all. It benefits the speaker, it benefits the hearer, it benefits the person who is arranging this kind of meeting and audience, who's actually facilitating this Hari Katha. But the maximum benefit goes to the speaker or the preacher. At least in our case, as a sadhaka. For liberated souls, well, they are already liberated. Maximum benefit goes to the people whom they are preaching. But for us, maximum benefit goes to us as a preacher, because if you truly preach, you remind yourself. Preaching means reminding yourself what is truth and what is the message, and we have to follow. That is real preaching, reminding yourself the absolute truth. Before we remind others, we remind ourselves. But if we speak some stories and kathas and entertain, then what are we reminding ourselves? We are making ourselves forget the true message, and we will just be reveling and enjoying those stories and entertainment and some kind of sloppy and superficial type of talks. It doesn't help anybody. And if we talk about, I mean to say, people are talking about morals nowadays. People are talking about morals in the name of spirituality. What to do about that? There's so many institutions talking about morality, do good, be good, and that is spirituality. Do good, be good is okay. Nobody's saying no, but that is not the message. The message is go beyond good and bad. Shubha Shubha Phala, Shubha Shubha Phalairevam, Krishna says. The message is go beyond heat and cold, go beyond good and bad, go beyond dualities. That's the message of Gita. So we can't change the message. Okay, we are not perfect and we can't follow properly, and we are liable to fall down, and we do fall down, but at least we can fall down, but the message should not fall down. We can assist the parampara to hold up the flag of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Even though we are weak, we can assist them. But the point is not to actually snatch the flag and throw it away. That's not that we should not do. At least if we can't assist, we should not destroy. That is preaching. Preaching means assisting the mission. Preaching doesn't mean destroying the mission or changing the route of the mission. That's not preaching. So if you can't speak the true message, if you don't have the courage to speak the true message, or if you don't have the courage to repeat what Prabhupada speaks, okay, no problem, speak simple things. At least we can say Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we can't say illusion preaching, if we can't say Krishna Consciousness declaration of war against illusion energy, no problems. Speak simple things, but don't change things. Don't say Krishna Consciousness means be good, help others. I mean, to help others means be good, or maybe, for example, what else? Krishna conscious means do help poor, for example. That's not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is helping everybody and giving them the message. So, Krishna consciousness means become successful in life. No, come on. Krishna consciousness has nothing to do with success or failure. Krishna says go beyond success and failure. What's that? Shubha Shubha Phalairevam. Man apmanyo, go beyond. Go beyond. Man means honor and dishonor. Go beyond success and failure. Krishna says in Gita. Don't be entangled in either failure or success. These concepts are relative, and these are material concepts. So in the name of preaching, to bring material concepts in the preaching, then what's the point of? Then you are actually not assisting. You're trying to block the parampara. So we can play a role in preaching mission. If you can't play a big role, you can play a small role, no problem. But at least play a role of assistance and not play a role of blocking or even destroying. I mean to say, there are in all institutions, in all the history, if you see all theistic religions, there have been people who have actually deviated the sampradaya by their preaching. Even in fact, after Chaitanya Prabhu, when there were 13 upper sampradayas which propped up. Bhaktivinoda Thakur listed all of them: Aula, Baula, Sakhiveki, Gaurang Nagari, was that Sena? Was that? Neda Nadi. So many. I mean, so what they did, they actually changed the message. They deviated the message. All those were subtle deviations. There was deviation. There was one Roop Narayan. He wrote a big book. This book, I read it. and verses after verses after verses after verses, Bhagavatam, CC, Gita, and he became very famous. But Hemlata Thakurani, who was daughter of Srinivasa Acharya, she was here in Vrindavan. She recognized something is wrong with this philosophy, and she recognized the subtle points which were wrong and which could become disastrous in the long run. She just expelled him. That can also happen. So it's best to repeat what Prabhupada says. Although people may not like sometimes, of course, you can present it in a proper way. Presentation requires some intelligence to present, to do proper presentation. But at the same time, if you speak truth, some people are not going to really like it. They might, your message might change their life, but initially they might not like. But whatever it is, what Prabhupada says, he says. And if we repeat, that will have power, and but that might bring some difficulties, that might bring some problems, but that's okay. Those very difficulties and those very problems, those are blessings in disguise. And that only will help you to go beyond Maya. Because as soon as we become comfortable in this material world, immediately Maya is there. Immediately mind will think complete nonsense. So we are not here to make our life comfortable. We are here to make our lives difficult, but spiritual difficulty, not material difficulty. Material difficulties, Krishna will take care. He will take care of his devotees. He will not let his devotees to fall into any kind of material difficulties, but spiritual difficulties in the service of Lord, difficulties in preaching the true message. Christ was crucified. All his 12 apostles were crucified, almost all of them. Some were murdered. Prophet Muhammad, he had to face so many difficulties. So many of his disciples were either killed or martyred. You see, there's been a long history of people being killed or martyred in other theistic religions. In our Ramanujacharya's guru, Mahapur, he died in prison. They blinded Quraysh because he spoke truth. Madhvacharya, people tried to oppose him, and some people even tried to kill him. So why these things are happening to these great acharyas? Because, they are great acharyas, they are devotees, so why these things are happening? All of them face difficulties and people oppose them. Why these things are happening to them? Is Krishna not protecting them? Krishna is protecting them, but they will have everybody who speaks truth and who preaches truth, he will have to face difficulties. That difficulties are actually ornaments, jewels, or let's say other reward of God to his pure devotees. That when they face difficulties and when they overcome those difficulties by the blessings of God, they'll be glorified in this material world and they will cross this dangerous illusion of this material world. That is preaching in real sense. So let us preach. Bhakti Santa said, let us preach with full vigor and full energy till the last breath of our lives. Let us preach the message of Rupa and Raghunath and spend and shed 200 gallons of our blood to preach the message all around the world. These were the last words of Bhakti Santa Saraswati Thakur. And if we do so, if we preach in the real spirit, then we will be saved from Maya. Krishna will save us. Of course, even then, we have to be alert and be in right association. Otherwise, illusion is dangerous. So, thank you. I can't see anything. Okay, so that's about preaching. I think Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, first preachers were Haridas Thakur and Nityananda Prabhu. Sanatan Goswami also. Sanatan Goswami also. Mahaprabhu said, Shano Shano Sanatan, Shano Haridas. Please listen to me. Prati ghare ghare jai mangiye bhiksha. This is preaching. Go to every house and beg them. So preachers, real preacher's mood is in begging. It's not really commanding. It's begging them to take Krishna's name, begging them. Prabhupada Saraswati says, what is preaching? Prabhupada Saraswati says, you go to them and you speak them humbly. My dear sir, you're very intelligent and you're very knowledgeable, but at least for some time, throw all your intelligence in a dustbin and hear the message of God. Prabhupada Saraswati says that. That is begging. That's how we beg. So Mahaprabhu said, go to every house and preach. Mange ai bhiksha. Bolo Krishna, bhajo Krishna, karo Krishna shiksha. This is preaching. Speak about Krishna, serve Krishna, and instruct about Krishna to others. So, yeah, this is something I want to touch about preaching. Some practical points about preaching, but there's another side of preaching, which is managerial side, and that's also important. What is preaching from managerial perspective? Preaching doesn't mean really giving a lecture. Preaching means helping people to raise their consciousness. It's not just to prepare a lecture on the internet, take some information and put some points and speak. That is okay. That is some part, but it's not the real thing in preaching. Preaching means helping others. Preaching means helping them to raise their consciousness. So managerially, there might be so many congregations, so many people connected to us. So we have to help them. We have to think of some strategies, of some planning, of some maybe tricks to help people to come up in Krishna consciousness. That is the managerial side of preaching, and that also has to be taken care of. Because as you preach, people will connect to you. Even if one family, even if one person, you have to help him because you have to train him. That's the managerial thing of preaching. You have to train him practically. You have to follow up with him so that he can raise his consciousness, because he's in the society. He or she is in society. Society is corrupted. It's crazy, and also you have to guide him, because he will ask you what to do. It's not just theoretical points he's going to ask you. He will ask you some practical, okay, should I do job? Should I not do job? Should I change the city or not? So preaching also requires us to be wise enough to give some practical life suggestions. Otherwise, you're going to give wrong suggestions and ruin his life. That's also there. So there is some managerial side of preaching, and then there's so many congregation. You have to handle them, and you have to make them, you have to keep them together, otherwise they'll fight like cats and dogs. This also happens. People fight. It's not. We are not in Vaikuntha that people will not fight and people will love each other. Everybody's loving. That doesn't happen practically. People say we love each other. I mean to say, even husband-wife fights. So why will not devotees? I mean, devotee husband-wife fight. So why not devotees will fight? So practically, people fight. People have enviousness. They don't become Paramahamsas overnight. That's utopian fantasy or dream to think. They're chanting Hare Krishna, so they should be pure. No, come on. I cannot become pure after 25 years. Because anyway, I'm useless. But practically talking, how can anybody become pure if he's just 1 year or 2 years in Krishna consciousness? So people will connect to you. So you have to be wise and clever enough to keep them together. That's also one managerial side of preaching. Another side, managerial side, is to actually arrange for prasadam and lodging of devotees. Shivanand Sen was doing that service in preaching when he used to take devotees from Bengal to Jagannath Puri every year in Chaturmasi to meet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was arranging lodging and prasadam and everything. He was looking for finance. So that's also another part of preaching managerial side. So from practical side, preaching is there. From managerial side, preaching is there. I told both of them, both of these sides. And another side of preaching is internal side, within what we are doing. What we are doing within our consciousness, because sometimes when people preach, they're lost in preaching. They become lost in preaching. They try to help others genuinely. They try to manage people genuinely. But in that whole hustle and bustle, the internal aspect, the cultivation of internal aspect, that people lose, and that is one of the major reasons of fall down. They lose sight of themselves. Keeping sight of others and helping them, that's very nice. But illusion tricks us, and in that we lose sight of ourselves. And generally preachers fall down because they lose their sadhana, because they're very busy helping others, and they fall down. So that's the internal side, the internal cultivation side of preaching. So these are all perspectives, all aspects of preaching. One is practical aspect, where there are difficulties and the message should be correct. And the managerial aspect, where there's finance and congregation. And the internal aspect, we have to nurture within all these busy life, we have to cultivate ourselves. We don't forget ourselves, because we'll be slowly, if we get absorbed in this whole word of preaching and all this, we slowly sink in the swamp of material existence, and we will not even know that we're sinking. One day we'll fall down. But that's also there. That's the internal side of preaching. So these are all aspects of preaching, and the preacher, that's why becoming a preacher is not easy. A preacher is an all-rounder, dynamic person, and very responsible, so much responsibilities there, so many lives are there connected to him. So we should pray that we become true to our responsibilities. We become true preachers in our life. And then Tabuna Bandi and then Maya will not affect us. If we preach like this, then Mahaprabhu says Maya will not affect us. So it's not that if we simply give lecture, then Maya will not affect us. No, that doesn't happen. So we have to keep all these points in mind, and that is, I think, in a real sense, preaching. That is real preaching. Otherwise, simply speaking kathas and entertaining and giving some lecture, and that doesn't help anybody. That might be starting. That's okay. I mean to say, I'm not in favor of speaking stories and entertaining. That's out of question. That's nonsense, because you're changing the message. But you might give some lectures here and there, and that might be starting. But that is some shadow of preaching, some beginning. But real preaching contains all these three aspects of preaching, and that is dynamic preaching, and that is real preaching, and that helps others and helps ourselves, and helps the mission of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So any questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, you were referring about Prabodhananda Saraswati. He is the person Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted from Mayavad to Krishna.
No. That's wrong information. This information that Mayavad Prakashanand Saraswati in Kashi, he was a Mayavadi. People say Lord Chaitanya went and debated with him and converted him to a devotee, and he renamed him Prabodhanand Saraswati. But that's absolutely wrong, because that kind of misconception is coming from the book Advait Prakash. Okay. One book is the Advait Prakash, which is written by some imposter, and he wrote in this wrong informations just to defame Lord Chaitanya and defame actually Prabodhananda Saraswati and these people. But Prabodhana Saraswati was a different person. Prakashanand Saraswati was a different person. That Prabhupada writes in CC, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabodhana Saraswati was Sri Vaishnav. He was uncle of Gopala Bhatt. Since childhood, he was a great devotee. Prakashanand Saraswati was simply a Mayavadi.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Danvat
Hare
Pranam
Krishna.
ji. Prabhuji, I have a question. Prabhuji, when you said everybody gets tested when we are in preaching, even though we are useless, completely, I'm useless, I have literally no knowledge whatsoever. Whether we succeed or fail, that totally depends on Krishna. But how do we prepare for those tests? Because there are so many lives that depend on you when you're giving those messages. How do you still prepare though?
We have to prepare. That's what I told, that we have to prepare for the test by taking knowledge, first of all. That's why I always encourage devotees to please read Prabhupada books, which devotees do not do. I mean to say, because they say, we don't have time, it's so difficult, and this and that. But if we don't have knowledge, we will become confused when the test comes. I mean, see, when the test comes, why people fail? It's not that, I mean, people can also fail because they're weak, but you can also fail because you're confused. I mean, people can be very strong, but they become confused and they do frantic activities and they fall down. So one way is to take good knowledge. We should be armed with the weapon of knowledge. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Asanga shastrena jadena chitva. Become armed with the weapon of knowledge. In fact, Srila Prabhupada wrote a book which is not published now in ISKCON much. I have not seen of late, but the book's name was The Sword of Knowledge. And that is very important. Mahaprabhu says, Siddhant Volya Chitte na kara alas. Please don't become lazy in understanding philosophy. And I have seen devotees do not actually focus on philosophy and reading Prabhupada books. And that is one weak point there. So we can prepare by taking knowledge. Another thing we can prepare for the test is by actually always praying, and prayers have a lot of strength. Prayers give strength to heart and to the soul, and to cultivate this habit of praying regularly to God. And what kind of prayers? To pray to Him that, please, my Lord, protect me from this dangerous illusory energy. So the whole point is, the second point is we have to pray, but at the same time, we will genuinely pray when we understand how dangerous is illusory energy. So that's one thing. We can prepare for test by knowing the power of enemy. That's the second point. If we don't know what are the strategies of the enemy, we'll fail when we go in the war. So we should understand what is Maya perfectly. And to understand what are the tricks of Maya, how does she work, and what are the obstacles she can place. We have to actually do some PhD on Maya alongside Krishna. That's the point. And then when we understand Maya is, my God, this is Maya. Maya can actually, Maya is so tricky, so strong that actually we are not falling down now because she is not concerned with us much. She's like saying, okay, this person is not too dangerous for me. That's why we are okay, safe. But when we advance, we'll become a danger to illusion, Maya. So she will attack us. So we should know how she attacks and how she does. She can make us fall down by making us think that we're advancing in devotion. She's very tricky. We might feel we're advancing and we might feel this is okay, this is nice, and this is so many devotees and my heart is becoming pure, but actually you'll be falling down. That's how she works. Yeah, so second is, please, second point is we understand the enemy perfectly. And when we understand, then we'll start praying, because we will then understand how dangerous position we are. And the third thing is always follow the orders of your seniors and your spiritual master. Because if we don't do that, then we will fall into when we fall into calamities or dangerous or tests, we will not pass them because we don't have dedication to. I mean to say, we don't have humbleness to show God that okay, we follow your servants. So that's very important, actually, very important to always follow the instructions, no matter how much hard they seem. But try, at least we can try to follow them as far as we possible. And that will actually
No.
I think video stopped.
Yeah, please hold on. I think there's some video link problem. They're just messaging.
Yeah, just come up now.
Yeah, please hold on. Please stay online.
Then we can think about Narottam Das Thakur. He was politicized heavily by his godbrothers, but what he did, if we know that, we will try to follow him. So that's another point. Please read about saints regularly. Read about their life histories. Read about their just life histories, not just teachings, and that will help us a lot. Like that. So these things we can do to prepare for test.
Thank you, Prabhuji. One quick thing. When you said read books, it seems like a vicious circle that you have to have knowledge to, of course, preach and counteract some questions that are coming. But at the same time, you will acquire knowledge when you go out and preach. So it seems like a circle that fulfills each other.
Of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you preach, you'll be forced to read. When you read, then you will like to preach. That's absolutely correct. So, but let me just add a point here. If we truly preach, then we will like to read, because there are so many people who are preaching, but they don't read books. I know personally, there's so many devotees preaching in the sense giving lectures, but they've not read Prabhupada books. Because what they're doing is they're trying to prepare lectures and trying to deliver lectures from internet and here and there and put some masala. You know masala? I don't know in Hindi. I don't understand.
Yes.
So that's
putting their
what
own
preachers
language
are doing.
in.
Yeah. So then in the process, they are thinking about those kind of points and this and that, and they don't read Prabhupada books. So that and read, and then we like to preach. So that's the process. That's how preaching helps us. That's why I told preaching helps the preacher the most, because he himself becomes enthused to read Prabhupada books, because he's preaching true message. So he comes back to Prabhupada. He's a true messenger. And we like to know what the true messenger says, try to deliver. So it nurtures each other.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna ji.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Who is this, by the way? Can you just?
Prabhuji, this is Rahul Prasad from Mumbai.
Okay.
Yeah. Prabhuji, you said even if we preach in full flow, then also we may fall down if we are not alert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that means, Prabhuji, if means lose sight from our sadhana, then Prabhuji, can you tell something, means how to strengthen our sadhana then?
Well, if we want to strengthen our sadhana, the best way is to always do Mangalarti, never miss Mangalarti, and morning chanting, and reading Prabhupada books daily 1 hour. That should always be there. That is not forgiven if you miss that. because those are the backbone of our sadhanas. And you know what? Actually, people for congregation, fall down begins when they actually become lax in Mangalarti, because that's the main thing, getting up in the morning, because after that you can chant and you can do so many things. So, and for brahmacharis, fall down doesn't begin when they lose Mangalarti, because they have to get up for Mangalarti in the temple. So that's not for them. For them, they lose sight of sadhana when they take everything mechanically. They take this process as a process, because what happens when you are full time and you are staying in the temple, you're doing the Mangalarti, you're chanting in the morning, you are attending lecture, and you're doing everything possible. But when you lose a spirit from inside and you think it's a process to follow to achieve a goal, then actually fall down begins, because this is not a ritualistic process. This is the way of life. This is the call of soul, Krishna consciousness. That has to be remembered all the time. So for them, when this kind of thought begins, then the fall down begins. Of course, lust is also there for full-time devotees. That's another thing. So yeah, morning Mangalarti, chanting morning, reading Prabhupada books, not eating food outside, unoffered food. That's also important. Mind becomes contaminated. You can't even offer outside stuff to Krishna and eat in the name of offering that it's offered to Krishna, because it's prepared by somebody else and it's not prepared devotionally, so it carries a lot of sins and contaminated consciousness. So these simple basic things, if we follow, then we will be strong in sadhana. Of course, the most important point is to be associated with devotees who are strong in sadhana. That's the most important point, because even after doing all these things, we might become loose in sadhana because we don't have good, strong association who reminds us again and again that, well, do you perform your sadhana nicely, increase that quality day after day after day. Keep on going. We have to be remembered, but because after all, after some time, your sadhana is going to come down, no matter how much hard you try. This material world, it's going to come and go up. So when it comes down, we need help, we need support. If we have strong association, they will say, okay, keep on going, get up, and we'll again get up. Otherwise, we'll sink down in this swamp. So this is what we can do to keep our sadhana.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one more small question. You were saying in this material side of preaching that whether should one stay in city, do job, or like so. Means what will be Prabhuji ideal for us? Like if we have we have sufficient material, sufficient money, so we should stay in city, or
I don't know. It is very contextual. You can ask your people who know you. But as far as general advice, general advice is, if you have money, sufficient money, if God has given you sufficient money and sufficient livelihood, then why to stay in city and do job? Just go to some farm, go to some place, live nicely. That's all. Live a peaceful life, do bhajan, and go back to God. If you have money, go to some suburb, stay nicely, put some bank in your money, and just get interest and lead your life, and then die there and go back to God. And that's all. It's just simple. It's plain common sense. Why do we take hectic to multiply our money and do so many things? It's good for that.
yeah, yes,
Isn't it? I mean, the general advice is like that. It's common sense.
yes, Prabhuji, yes.
If I
Because
was congregation and I had money, I would have done this. Definitely. I would have gone to some farm, grow my food, live nice, simple life, put some money in bank, get interest, do my bhajan and preach little, and that's all. Simply finish. Life is short, and finish it off. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. We are going this. Prabhuji, just I'm planning for a village preaching. Just can you give some advice how to go about it?
Well, I don't know. It depends on which village, but in general, village preaching means You don't have to speak some complex philosophy because they're villagers.
Yeah, they
You
can't
speak some
understand.
simple philosophy and a lot of kirtans
Okay.
and prasad. So they just come, that's all. People join. That's the trick there, village preaching.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandava Pranam. I have one question about that. You know, when we are trying to preach Prabhupada's knowledge, like purely, we are not deviating, or at least we are trying as far as possible. So then when we face some difficulties with other devotees who are not so cooperative, or they don't like that we are preaching Prabhupada's message purely, so how we should deal with this kind of devotees then?
Yeah, this will happen, and this is happening. But what we should do is, well, we should keep on preaching like that. Whatever they speak about us, don't worry about that. Let them tell, let them speak. And when they meet us, we give them full respect because they're devotees. So let them speak about us. We don't speak about them. And just keep on going, that's all. But if they're disturbing us in our preaching, that might also happen. If they say, if they're like after us, don't preach like this and that, if you were in a place where there's a congregation like this, then in that case, we can sometimes distance ourselves from that devotee for some time, or but we should not argue back, because devotees who say don't do like this, they will never listen to us. And if we try to explain them, they will debate. So what's the point? Just listen and keep on doing your stuff. If there's too much disturbance, distance yourself and do your own thing. That's all. That's what how people do. Otherwise, there's no practical solution. And another thing is, if we preach purely, then slowly we will make people like that. We'll make friends like that who are preaching purely, and our group changes slowly and gradually. And then we'll be like, okay, then we'll be encouraged like that.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Prabhuji.
Prabhu.
Sorry, go ahead, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandava.
Hare Krishna.
Marchana Targakar from Navi Mumbai. Prabhuji, when you are preaching, when you are cultivating devotees, so as you said, they come with a lot of personal problems and all. Sometimes this becomes a real hindrance. Like they only want you to deal with their personal problems, and they are no longer interested in helping
you're right.
So,
You're right.
how to deal with that, and how long do you keep on cultivating? Means before you really give
you're
up?
right. You're absolutely right. It's a complete mess, and sometimes if we keep on doing, then they actually pull us down. We start falling down. Becomes a pressure on the mind. So what I do is, and what is practical advice is, give them some solution once and twice, and if they don't listen, I mean to say, if they're not listening, or if they're listening and they're not doing anything, then just tell them, frankly, okay, this was my advice, try to follow, and that's all, and just leave them. So after 2 or 3 sessions of counseling, then just leave them. Then actually it's good to leave them, because give them time to think how to implement what we have told. And generally what happens is, if we leave them, then automatically after some time, people find their own ways to adjust. Some people might not find ways. Some people might think, these people are not taking care of us, and they're not, people are like that. So they're not like helping. But anyway, there are all sorts of people. So yeah, we have to leave them. That's all. Let them learn by their own life experience. We have given them a thought, and let them learn from their life experience. When they will not follow what we have said or whatever, they'll face some miseries and problems, and then they will change. I mean to say, you see, if counseling could have changed everybody, then Krishna would not have made this material world. So he would have made some spiritual counseling rooms in Vaikuntha. And you go and tell them, and they say, but no, Krishna had to make such a big drama here in this material world, because he knows counseling doesn't work 100% with everybody. People don't change. So then he made this word, and his policy is, let them do mistake, let them suffer, and let them learn, because that's how they will truly learn. So that's why this material word is there. So we can't expect people to change. Krishna cannot change them by counseling. How we can change? So, okay, but at the same time, we are devotees. We are there to help them. So we counsel them one or two times and then leave them. Okay, fine. And focus on something else. Because what happens is, we keep on counseling 5 people and our whole energy is sucked, and then we can't do any other thing. So if we want to preach, you can actually lose 5 people but gain 10 people. That's also one statistics. Rather than breaking your head with 5 people and then nothing will happen to them, and we'll also come down, and those 10 people who we can benefit, they'll also lose everything.
Yes.
And another aspect is sometimes you teach people by not telling them anything. That's also a great wisdom. Sometimes if you tell people, they don't do those things, and if you don't tell, they do those things. You see sometimes we have tendency to do those things. I mean to say, we have tendency to do that which is said to us, like completely opposite. People are like that. People who are negative, people who are very negative in their approach, if you tell them, they will not do that, and they will just do the opposite thing, simply because this is told to me. So that subconscious mind works like that. So it's always advisable, speak, leave them, let them learn by life experience, focus on others, and go ahead. That's all.
Thank you, Prabhuji. One more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing was, you mentioned about subtle deviations. So sometimes it's very difficult to recognize these subtle deviations. And suppose if you recognize them, should you point them out? And especially if a senior is involved in it.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, if we recognize them, we see if seniors and if juniors involved, you can always point out. No problem. But if seniors involved, or even if a person who are on the same level, our friends, then you can do that. That also sometimes you have to do very cautiously, because people get hurt. They're on same level. But seniors involved, then we are not supposed to point. That's not my case. We can tell to their seniors confidentially that these are the things. So if they can handle that and take care. But generally for seniors, we don't tell anything. But if those deviations are very disastrous, even though if they're subtle, sometimes we can these subtle deviations can bring big disaster, and this happens. I mean, things are very subtle, we can see, but we know the consequence by preaching experience. This can lead to a disastrous situation. In that case, we might
Sorry, Prabhuji, I lost your voice.
then is this wrong or not? So what is the explanation for these things? For example, so then he might give some answer, and he might realize on his own that these the same thing.
I think Prabhuji is disconnected.
Yes, Hare Krishna, please wait on, he'll join. There might be some internet issues.
Yeah.
You still had the problem.
Prabhuji, you are muted at the moment.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Sorry, we lost you because of some disconnection.
क्या हो गया? खत्म हो गया? हरे कृष्णा.
Hare
आप
Krishna.
join
Yes.
करो. इसमें नहीं हो रहा, आपका बाइक से कनेक्ट नहीं हो रहा.
Recording in progress.
हरे कृष्णा. ऐसे दो से कनेक्ट करोगे, इनको आएगी. बंद करो उसको प्रभु वहाँ. आप इसमें कनेक्ट करो ना, घुमाओ उसको, पोर्ट्रेट पे लो. बंद करना है.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hari Bol. Yeah. Can you heard my answer or what?
Only part of it.
Was that?
Only part of it, Prabhuji. The connection, I think.
Till where? Till where did you hear?
Yeah, so I mean, I had asked that about the. So you had said, okay, you try to connect with some seniors whom their seniors and try to tell them. After that, I did not.
Achha. No. Actually, the point is that that's the main point. But what subtle deviations? I mean to say, you have to also understand which subtle deviations to address and which not to address. Because if we start addressing all subtle deviations, and there's so many subtle deviations in all devotees, then we'll get mad. So some subtle deviations we don't address at all. We don't just some deviations which are not disastrous. We have to recognize which deviations are disastrous in the long run, which are not. Some subtle deviations are okay, then you can just leave it off. If they're disastrous, then go to the senior and tell them, and then they can handle this issue. And if there's no senior, then if there's no senior around and he's the only person, then you can meet them alone. Don't point out in the public in front of anybody. Just keep a meeting, and then don't point out. Just ask them question that we were thinking like this. So why this is happening? Is there any explanation for this? So they might tell, okay, we are doing these things for some practical reasons. Something might be there, and these things can be solved. So like this we go about.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. And one more small thing is, I've even noticed that sometimes when you are listening to a genuine person or a genuine speaker who's giving the genuine message of Srila Prabhupada, then many others, they try to dissuade you from that. They tell you that this person is not speaking the right things. They will destroy your spiritual life, and you're committing spiritual suicide. And
Yeah.
They sort of really confuse me.
So no, I mean to say, yeah, people that trying to confuse and then they say like that. But you see the point. One thing I'll tell you: if we have read Prabhupada books ourselves, that's the whole point there. We'll never become confused, and then we will. People say so many things, let them say, but we'll be convinced within ourselves that actually Prabhupada is saying these things and this person is saying exactly what Prabhupada says. And sometimes, when you hear the true message, it actually affects our heart and soul. That's also like that. It's not just a story. So if that's there, just continue. Don't worry about others. People, there's so many people will discourage. It will always happen. It has always happened. Will always happen. But the way to not become confused is to actually read Prabhupada books ourselves. So we exactly know where Prabhupada said what, and so we'll not become confused. And we can tell, hey, look, Prabhupada says the same thing, and you can quote to them, and then tell, so if Prabhupada says the same thing, and these people are saying the same thing, so what's the problem? Then let them give explanation. That's all.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat pranam. Pranav here.
Hare Krishna, Pranav. Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. So Prabhuji, actually, if you have some time for, there are a couple more questions.
Okay.
So there is a devotee who's asking in the chat, how should, like, we meet certain people who are disappointed in God that they have taken their family members away, or things like that. So what should be our attitude towards preaching towards them?
He has taken family members away. Okay, some people, family members might have become Krishna conscious devotee full time, isn't it like that?
No. Like the family members, like some who died, and
Achha,
they blame
died.
God. They blame God for these things.
Well, no problem. Try to explain them nicely, because they might be like sad or sorrowful. But tell them truth. Tell them. I mean to say, I tell people that, well, you are so unhappy because you lost somebody and God took that, but that's for a purpose. That's for a purpose to actually help you awaken from the reality to illusion of this material world and make you realize that relations are temporary. Speak truth. Speak the philosophy. And actually people change if we speak truth. But of course you have to speak politely. We can't just bang them. But speak truth, yeah. These things will happen today or tomorrow, but but God is trying to make us realize relations are temporary. So become attached to me. Don't become attached to anybody in this material world. Otherwise, you'll again have to face some mysteries. That's all.
And Prabhuji, there is a lot of preaching going on for children as well. And what should be our approach towards preaching to children, or how should we preach?
For children, it's like stories and shlokas. That's all. Tell them stories and make them learn shlokas, because the memory is good. They like to learn. Children like to learn things. So that's how children preaching will go on.
Understood. And Anumataji has another question.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, sometimes, especially here in Canada, people are very complacent about their lives. Like they say they don't have time, but still there is some kind of instinct to learn about Krishna. So we try to preach them indirectly or in a subtle way, just giving them indirect, say like something from Vanipedia, something from source, or something from, say, 1 or 2 verses recordings or Prabhupadaji's recording touching some key situations. Can you please suggest what can we do here when it comes to such indirect preaching situations?
Well, Canada, America, Europe, people are busy. People are busy in India also nowadays. Nobody has time for anybody. People are just absorbed in themselves and their phones. That's all. So what to do in this scenario? Well, what to do in this scenario? It's you see what I've seen. People have made reading groups I don't know in Canada, but all over the world, they have reading groups. So they come in at a conference call or somewhere, or Zoom, and they read Prabhupada books together. And they don't give lectures. So what happens is people actually like to join that because they think, we can't take our time to read, but okay, here these people are reading, so let us sit and read with them. And people really take our time and they get connected. So that's one way. Make some reading groups, and for reading, people take out time because they know they can't read themselves. So here is a time in a week or twice in a week. Okay, this is scheduled. Okay, fine. Now I have a scheduled time, so they can take out time from other things, and I can read a book. So when they read a book, they have a sense of fulfillment that I'm reading a book and finishing a book. And that actually gives a lot of sense of achievement to that person, and he continues. So that's one way in West or even in India nowadays. And another way is to actually like you are doing snippets, or that's one way snippets can be sent. Another way is actually to also ask them to chant if they're chanting. And probably you can keep a record of that. I mean, you can make a forum in which people can enter how many rounds they have chanted. Okay, so maybe 1 round, 2 rounds. So those chanting rounds everybody can see. So I've seen that other people become really encouraged. People say, okay, fine, that person has chanted 8 rounds. I'm just chanting 1 round. So they quickly come up in their chanting. I've seen people chanting 2 rounds for 6-7 years, but as soon as we started this group, they come to 16 rounds because they have to enter themselves.
Yes.
So that's a very good technique to actually help people come up. That's what I can think. Some things.
No, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Those are very good tips.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So if there are no more questions,
okay,
we can stop here. But thank you, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class. And please, Prabhu, you're saying something.
Yeah, I was just saying, I mean to say thank you to you and also Madhu Sevit. Prabhu. He's there, no?
Yes, Prabhu, he's here.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. You have enlightened our conversation so much, everyone feels so encouraged.
So how many people were there on this forum now?
52 people today. 53 people.
52.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good strength you have got. 52 is a good strength.
Average strength is around 20, Prabhu. Regular, that's just like 365.
Okay. Today we actually covered all the devotees from all over different
What's that?
Whoever we could invite.
Oh, okay.
So
okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. And we hope to see you again soon.
Yeah. Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Vaishnava Namo Ananta Koti Vishwandi ki jai.